Oh, the sweet irony of the last video and how it combines with this one, which should have been released a week ago. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Neil. Welcome to the channel. I like to make stuff, comics, tabletop games, concept art, and kind of everything adjacent to that. And having had a 30+ year career doing that for other people, I'm going back to trying to do it again for myself. And I'm documenting that process in the hopes that it will inspire, encourage, and help somebody else do the same. Because Lord knows, I think everybody should be making something to put out into the world. Anyway, in today's video, to get one thing out of the way first, the audio, this relates to the topic of today's video, as you'll see in a minute. The audio on this video is going to have this problem. I'm going to highlight it now. That clicking sound is in the microphone if I even remotely move it. That applies whether I clip it to my top or whether I don't. I apologize for that. I am going to update all of my microphone setup. The whole point was to stay consistent, but I think if I want to stay consistent and maintain an amount of quality, then I need to update the audio. Anyway, just to get that out of the way, there's a clicking in the video. It's that, which I can't hear, but I know it's there because I can actually see it on the audio readout. Anyway, the irony of the last video, which isn't last week's video because there wasn't a video last week. But the irony of the last video was I talked about something I referred to as non-negotiables, things that if you are trying to change your life, or if you're trying to create something, or whatever it is you're trying to do, if you're trying to do a thing that you're currently not doing, or you're trying to finish something that you are doing, you really need to build non-negotiables into your routine. And one of the examples I used was the fact that releasing a video every week for me had become a non-negotiable. That video was 2 weeks ago. Does make me laugh. Anyway, after I made that video, a friend of mine who'd seen the video asked about overlapping non-negotiables. You can have multiple things in your life that should be a non-negotiable, but will conflict with each other. For example, I arranged to meet my friend Bond on the day that I'm going to the gym. I am running late in the morning. Therefore, I have to choose the non-negotiable. Am I going to be late for Bond, or am I going to miss the gym? This highlights an order of importance in non-negotiables. My friend Bond is very understanding. Therefore, I gave him plenty of notice because going to the gym right now for me is the highest non-negotiable in amongst everything I'm trying to do. More than anything else, I have to, on the days where I'm meant to go to the gym, I have to go. And so far, I have maintained that non-negotiable every other day for what is over a month at this point. It feels like longer, but it's not. It's been about a month. Last week's video that didn't happen, which was the same topic as this video. What happened was I filmed the video, but this also highlights an importance of better planning on my part. I filmed the video on the Sunday, but I'd left it quite late on the Sunday and I had things to do on that Sunday as well. So I filmed the video. I knew I was meeting Bond on the Monday and I knew I didn't have to train on the Monday. I'd already trained on that Sunday. So I filmed the video on the Sunday evening. I got up on the Monday morning knowing that I was going to edit the video and then upload it later that day. When I started to edit the video, not only was the audio doing that, but my iPhone has a problem. I'm recording all of this on my iPhone, and my iPhone has a problem at the moment where the connector inside my iPhone is now starting to wear away. So anything that I connect via that doesn't always connect completely. And I've noticed this when I'm using wired headphones with my iPhone. The audio goes funny. And lo and behold, the way this microphone works is I have this small device, a receiver plugged into the bottom of the iPhone, and that's how they connect. So the connection is showing up and it's working, but the quality of the audio, it was unusable. It was completely unusable. At which point I knew I had a problem with that video. So instead of thinking about it properly, I did sit and think, shall I just upload? As I'd mentioned in the previous video, if I wasn't able to make a video due to being ill, I would just upload a time lapse with a description to keep the consistency of weekly. And going forward, that is what I would do. But what I don't want the channel to turn into is, oh, I didn't have time to make a video, I'll just upload a time lapse. And that's kind of how it felt last week. So I thought, no, I will go and see my friend. I will come back. I will record a video. I will edit it and I will upload it. It might go out a day late, but it would get done. By the time I got back from seeing Bond, I was absolutely shattered. I was like, that's not a problem. I'll do it tomorrow. What that didn't take into account is I had a lot of work to do that week for War Cradle. Had that been a lot of work of my own, I would have prioritized making the YouTube video over doing the work on my own projects. But this is paid work, and I'd promised that I would have this work finished on time. And to get that finished by the deadline that I'd promised, I had to work all of that day and then all of the next day. And then I had to work into the next day as well because there were changes and alterations. And as I mentioned with non-negotiables, there are certain things in your life that you're just going to get done. And for me, work is one of them. If someone's paying me to do something, I've had times in the past where I've missed deadlines and things like that. When I was first doing this for a living, I had times where I missed deadlines. I certainly have times where I missed my own deadlines for doing work. But I reached a point many, many, many years ago at this point where I was like, absolutely not. You are not missing deadlines anymore. If there's one thing you're going to hit, it's going to be deadlines from this point going forward. So if I promise somebody an amount of work is going to be done by a certain time, that work gets done regardless of anything else. That would also actually include going to the gym, because promises to myself versus promises to other people, my own, if I've made promises elsewhere. Now that feels like it contradicts what I mentioned about Bond, but I knew that I could message Bond and say, look, I'm running late. Can we meet a little bit later? And it wouldn't be a problem. When you're working, especially in the fields that I work, if people have print deadlines, if people have promotional materials that need to be getting, there are a million and one reasons why you can't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to miss the deadline by a day or two. And then I got to the midweek, to which I was like, well, you're going to want to release another video at the weekend. And then there's work that needs to be doing here of my own stuff that I've been working on, which I will talk about briefly in a minute. That's to say, it sounds like I'm making excuses, but it's not. It's a combination of priorities, picking which of the non-negotiables are priorities. And you have to look at things in a realistic way of what is a non-negotiable here. Is me, I don't know, playing the Xbox a non-negotiable? No, it's not. Of course it isn't. You know, that's what I do because I've got all of my non-negotiables done. Something else to come up that I will talk about in a future video. When speaking to Bond, we were talking about the difference between overloading your life realistically and taking time for yourself. During that discussion, I was talking about some of the things that I was trying to do, to which he said, that sounds like you're overloading your life. And I was like, look, if I've got time to spend 6 hours on Minecraft, I'm not overloading my life, because I could take 2 hours out of that 6 hours on Minecraft and dedicate those to 3D modeling. You know, you have to be honest and realistic with yourself. There should have been a video last week, and this is the next point of it. You have to hold yourself accountable for the things that you've done. I regret not releasing a time lapse last week. I will make sure that doesn't happen again. I could have released a time lapse in the interim, but then that would have started to feel weird. No, I could have released something in the interim. When I realized Monday wasn't working for the release, I should have stuck to what I said. When you're building non-negotiables, when you're building an outline for the things that you're trying to do, the things that you're trying to achieve, you need a plan. There's a thing called SMART goals, and I cannot think for the life of me what the SMART goals are. But a SMART goal isn't just, I'm going to release a video every week on YouTube. That's not a SMART goal. It's very undefined. At this point, I will have a list of what happens to get that done. If you did not have the time to film something, even if you did and you just didn't get it filmed for whatever reason, then at the very least, upload a time lapse with a description. It would be even better if you could write some kind of description into the progress of the video, not just in the doobly doos below. It's all to say that when you're building these non-negotiables, you can't just say, I'm going to go to the gym every day. Great. What are you going to do when you get there? You have to combine the non-negotiable with a SMART goal, which means I will have to talk about SMART goals at some point soon, because now I've covered them in this video, which wasn't kind of in the plan, but it should be, because it is important. because it's especially important with what I've got going on at the moment. Anyway, the point here is, because I do want to move on to another topic quickly. The point here is that yes, there are non-negotiables, but you have to understand that there needs to be an amount of flexibility in those non-negotiables, and there has to be a plan behind each of those non-negotiables. You can't make every element of your life non-negotiable. There are certain things that are non-negotiable, and you just kind of fit them in as and when they come up: eating, drinking, breathing, those kinds of things. Then you need to start making non-negotiables that you don't actually have to do. I don't have to create anything. I don't have to make these YouTube videos. No one's got a gun to my head. It's fine. But if I want this to succeed to any degree, if I want any of my projects to succeed to any degree, if I want to change my life so far as my health goes, my living situation, my finances, there have to be some non-negotiables in amongst those where it's like you cannot break these rules if you expect to see any kind of change. And then when those non-negotiables conflict, you have to accept that there are going to be orders of priority in amongst those. I would recommend actually have a list of these are my non-negotiables and these are the priorities, so that if they do conflict with one another, you can just think, no, this one's more important than this one, and move forward. So that's why there wasn't a video last week. That's why I'm going to try my best to make sure there's not a gap again. And that's how non-negotiables have to interact on a purely human level. As another example, you have to go to work, you have to pick your children up from school, and then a pipe bursts at home and starts flooding the house. I'm not here to tell you which one of those is the priorities, but when you are faced with those things, you have to look at each of them and think, how am I going to solve these problems in a way that is the most responsible, right? Highest on that list has to be the child over the flooding of your house and over your work. But in amongst that, you can't just let your house flood. And so you have to deal with the child problem in a way that also allows you to deal with the flood, that also means you're not going to get fired from work. And that order of importance applies to anything you're trying to do where you're trying to make change or you're trying to achieve a set of goals. Okay, on to the next thing. This week, I've been working on a new project. Sitting with Bond last Monday, I realized that making my own game is a ridiculously tall order. Just because you want to, just because you think you've got a good idea, and just because you think you've got some ideas that go with it, it's just not as simple as it might at first seem or feel. Certainly not for somebody like me who's a horrible perfectionist. I'm still working on the game. But in amongst that, I need to also move forward with the other things I'm doing. I can't just sit here day in, day out, picking up dice, rolling in them and thinking, does that work for what I'm trying to achieve? That's actually getting me nowhere towards some of my other goals that are non-negotiables: finances, supporting my career with the work that I'm doing, all of those kinds of things. So a game jam come up for the Shadow Dark RPG to create a zine for that. I decided I was going to enter. But this is another thing you have to understand about yourself and what you're trying to do. So I decided I was going to enter this Shadow Dark Games Jam. And when I started it, one, there was an extremely interesting point in the terms of the game jam about AI, which I'm going to get to at a later point. But there was a whole list of things to enter the game jam. It has to be 16 pages. And when I started to work on it, and the way the game jam works is that when you enter, you get given 3 old SNES game covers, and you have to somehow base your zine around that. My problem is with anything I make is I can't just look at a thing and think, oh, okay, I'll just do that. Once I started to work on it, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where there was just no chance I was going to fit it into the 16 pages that it was asking. But I could fit it into 24. And ZineQuest starts today. At the point of filming this, the 1st of February, this won't be out until tomorrow, the 2nd of February, but at the point of filming this, ZineQuest has started, which is Kickstarter's RPG zines that they promote for a month. And I'm going to attempt to release this zine that I'm working on for ZineQuest, at least get it to a point where it could be released by the end of the month. I would really like to launch the Kickstarter for this at the end of this week. That's this week's workload, is to get this zine to a point where I can give a proof of concept to Kickstarter and then just take it from there. So that's what I'm going to be working on over the course of this week. So in next week's video, which off the top of my head, I can't think what it was meant to be about, I will give an update to where I am with all of that and show anything I've done on it. Because I need, if I want to see if I can support myself doing my own work, I need to start releasing work into the world, seeing where it goes, building up a name and all of those things. As I think I've talked about before on the channel, the whole notion of build it and they will come, it's just nonsense. You have to get stuff out there. Annoyingly, I knew Zine Quest was coming, but I completely forgot about it. So while this feels like a rush, at this point, I've just got to get something done or out. Whether it's a success or not, I mean, I will probably make the Kickstarter extremely cheap, the funding goal extremely low, just so people will have paid me an amount of money, which means I have to finish this project and release it. I don't know what that means for doing a print version, but right now that's what I'm figuring out over the course of this week. So I'm going to leave it there. That's the reason, excuse, that there wasn't a video last week. But it's a learning process. Even for me, it's a learning process. Even though I've got these ideas in my head of how these things are going to work and play out, the non-negotiables and all of those things, you still learn from a situation that happened like that last week. And instead of just giving up and not doing something, it's like, no, own it, fix it, move forward. Own it, fix it, move forward. No, that's not a slogan. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. My name's Neil. And until the next video, make some non-negotiables for the things that you're trying to do and learn from them when they go wrong. All right. Cheers for watching. Bye. Bye. Bye.